Oh, thank you. You did a good job to spot me from that far away. They work. Have a good day. Well, that's unexpected. My ego right now. That big. Hello everybody. Today I'm asking one very simple question. How much car do you really need? I have been driving earlier today a 630 horsepower, 200,000 pound Bentley Continental GT and a 720 horsepower, 250,000 pound Aston Martin DBS. And right about now, I don't want to be in either of those for the rest of the day. Regrettably, at some point, I do have to get back in the Bentley, but I'm going to try and make that as far away as I possibly can, because you see, today I am driving a 911. Now, I do like the 911. I've owned one of them myself, driven very many of them, enjoyed quite a lot of them. Earlier in the year, I tried to film a 911 week. Now, unfortunately, my plans got skewered halfway through by the Rona, and so I'm trying now to do that once again. This week I want to hopefully have a real nice variety of different cars. This is one that I know a lot of people have asked for. This is a backdated resto mod 911. For those who aren't quite sure what that means, the 911, as you probably realise, has gone through quite a few different variations in its lifespan. It is the 73 and before cars that are often most highly prized, because those are the ones with the real classic look about them. You see, in 1974, crash regulations in the USA meant that the 911 morphed into what we call the impact bumper models. They grew that great big lip at the front and that crash bumper at the back. Now, I've got to say, I think Porsche did a pretty good job of integrating those bumpers compared with a lot of other companies. The old MGB, anyone remember what happened to that? But there are still quite a few people who really love the look of those older cars. With the 964, Porsche really got the styling of the 911 back and produced something I think that was, again, genuinely pretty, leaving all the cars in the middle somewhat lost. Sure, the impact bumper car had its fans, but there clearly weren't enough of them, because a long time ago the prices of them went down and seemed like they'd stay there forever. Even about 10 years ago, you could pick up a pretty decent impact bumper car for a 4-figure sum. And that meant that they were the perfect candidates for, well, mucking about with. And so many of them got turned into something like this. This started life as a 3.2 Carrera Sport. A late 80s car and prized for its fairly bulletproof mechanicals. As air-cooled cars go, it's only really the 993 which can compare in terms of durability. But as you might imagine, people aren't quite so keen to hack those up, and they're pretty decent out of the box. There are a lot of different companies who will happily create you a resto modded or backdated 911. Most of them seem to go for the look of the 73 2.7 RS. This car hasn't gone down that route entirely. There are bits which are a nod to that, the flared arches at the back. In truth, this is a fairly unique creation, and that really is the joy of doing this kind of thing, because it is a chance for those people that were only young in the 1960s or 70s to build the car that they never could option from new. This particular car has been built by a Yorkshire-based company called 911 Retro. If you want one like it, it's going to cost you about £110,000, and that includes the price of a donor vehicle. This one was picked up as an existing project of theirs, and I have to say, it's really rather good. I haven't yet put my foot down in it, as you can probably tell, but it is an utter and total delight. I make no secret of the fact that I'm really not a big fan of any 911 before the 964. They just don't really do that much for me. And yes, I have driven them, but this is wonderful. Now, the owner is currently experimenting with exhausts, and he wants to apologize because he's changed it around, and this one just doesn't sound quite as good as the one that was on it previously. Still sounds all right, but it's not got that great sort of throaty air-cooled 911 noise about it. And that's fine, I know it can be fixed easily. And because I'm so dedicated to my art form and your enjoyment, 2 weeks after I filmed the first portion of this review, I returned to the car for 2 reasons. Number 1, to let you sample it with the exhaust the owner wanted me to hear, and to give you a proper dynamic evaluation. So here we go. It does sound incredible. It's also absolutely spectacular. Now, outright pace is not the name of the game here. In truth, these are 60 limit roads, and simply keeping to the speed limit is engaging enough. Steering is pretty heavy even when up to speed, but you can place this car with total precision, and the sensation you get in this goldfish bowl of a cockpit is absolutely wonderful. The car does melt away. This later G50 gearbox is far better to use than the earlier, I think 915 it was, if my creaky old memory serves. And although it's vocal, it's not obnoxious. It just sounds like a proper car. It's responsive too. The suspension, so well judged. On the other roads I was driving in the reviews, I was at lower speeds over pretty poor roads, but once you pick up the pace, it just works. I've driven so many cars of this type that really are set up purely for track. You try and drive them on the road and they're simply unpleasant. This, not so in the least. What's most amazing about this car is how it feels, bearing in mind that I've just got out of a £250,000 Aston Martin. This feels like a real nice product. Leather everywhere, beautiful contrast stitching, it all feels really sumptuous. The engine has been very mildly breathed upon. It is moments like this where something like the Aston becomes no fun at all, and the 911 just goes through without an issue. As you can probably tell, this is a lumpy, bumpy, and fairly narrow road, and this is the perfect car for it. Speed, it's brisk enough, but it's not silly quick. Brakes are beautiful and progressive. Now, in fairness, on the Aston they were hideously grabby, but here, really quite something. Now, it's a firm riding car, but it's compliant. Alright, it's not that compliant, but it's a small sports car. It's lightweight, 1100 kilos. And for a day like this, it's even got a sunroof, which I'm keeping closed just because it messes with the light. But it's absolutely flipping fabulous. So sweet, so light, so delicate. There's Bilstein suspension on here. No power steering on this car, as you would expect, but it's one of those things that if you want it, you can have it. Customization is always the key with these things. I know that 110 grand might sound like an awful lot for what is ultimately a mucked around with old 911, but trust me, This is a quality product that has clearly been put together by somebody that knows what they're doing. I have seen a lot of 911 backdates, and many of them are a little bit rough around the edges. 110 grand really is sort of starter money these days for one of those builds. You can easily spend double, triple that, or a lot more if you want to go down the Singer route or something along those lines. This, in many ways, you could see as like a baby Singer, I guess, even though in truth it is its own thing. The dials here, beautiful, nice, easy to read, classic 911. They're really beautiful. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius once said, "It's a blithering idiot who tries to review a sports car in Surrey." In many ways, he was very much right. These are not the roads to really hoon down. They're too narrow, there's too many speed limits, too many policemen without any sense of humour, and to be fair, I've got too much of a social conscience to just hoof it past people's houses these days. But as a little tool to kind of snuffle around these weird little lanes with, this is just wondrous. There's plenty of space in this cabin as well. A lot of people with young children, and 911 is the perfect tool, and if you want to be able to enjoy a more classic car, this is exactly the right sort of thing you want to be doing it in. The simple fact about a lot of these old 911s is that they just don't drive anywhere near as well as everybody thinks that they do. Because they once saw them racing around a track, they have this idea in their heads that they must all be brilliant pin-shop handling cars. And that's simply not true. Now, if you want the classic handling experience, then sure, go and buy a fairly original one. But for me, I was never really that much in love with them. The more modern 911s has always been my bag. The pedals aren't even too close together, which is often something that can be an issue with these older cars. Visibility is, of course, spectacular, and that means that there's really very few reasons I can think of to not use this car. And it's one of those few cars I think that will be perfect either as a daily driver or as a special high days and holidays weekend car. This is a really nice product, and I just want to keep going all day long. That really is all I can say about it. I could bore you to tears with all the numbers, all the specifics, all the details of every single little bit of this car, but in truth, you don't need to hear any of that. This is purely and simply a car that makes you feel a certain way. It's a car that should put a smile on your face simply knowing it's tucked away in the garage. And honestly, this thing, much unlike yours truly, is without an ounce of fat, without any sort of middle-age spread about it. It is the perfect blend of old and new. And it's not silly money. Not for what these normally cost anyway. I really rather like it. So much that I'm actually, for once, enjoying driving a sports car around Surrey. I never would have believed that. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.